So I went to the library and pulled out an atlas, and I have a little friend over here called Muriel, and Muriel is going to come here. Muriel, come. And Muriel's going to take this atlas around so that you can see where Bhutan is. It's a tiny, tiny country, and it's in between China and India, beside Nepal. A lot of people haven't heard about Bhutan before. So my friend Muriel is going to walk around with the atlas so that you can see where Bhutan is. Here you are, Muriel, if you want to hold it this way. And then you can just walk around and show people. Thank you. This evening I'd like to explain give you a little preamp about what I'm going to read. I'm going to read mostly about Nepal and Bhutan. Over there you can see some pictures. The pictures on the left are Nepal. Those are Nepal. That is Bhutan. The big mask that you see is from Bhutan. That mask was given to me by the school that I volunteered at. And beside that, you'll see a piece of cloth. It's actually a skirt. And that's what I wore when I worked in Bhutan. And then the pictures beside there are all from Bhutan. And the bell, if you want to have a look at that, that's a traditional yak bell. So they put the bell around the yak's neck so that they can find where they are. Thank you. So in 2019, I bought a one-way ticket to Brussels, Belgium. All my life I've been a theater professor. And then COVID hit and my world dissolved. So I became a proposal writer for NBCC. But one of the things that was, to me, most miraculous was being allowed to go to Bhutan. It's very hard to get in there. They take very few tourists, and it costs a lot of money, but as a volunteer, I was able to go. So my story is going to start from when I went back to Dubai. I used to be a professor in Dubai at a women's university. I don't know if this is going to work for me. So I went back to Dubai before traveling to Nepal and Bhutan. This is a funny thing. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. I need help. That's what I'm here for. Thank you. So we're going to start by my returning to Dubai, and then we'll carry on to Nepal and Bhutan. So from England, I flew to Dubai and stayed with Seema for 3 weeks. It was so special to meet with her again and to see the myriad changes in Dubai. Seema and I went to our favorite Lebanese restaurant. It was September, so it was still very hot in the days, but cooler in the evenings. Early morning, I'd wake up early and swim in her outdoor pool. And fortunately, I was able to connect with my former students, Wejdan and Raja. They took me to the desert where we visited an old souk and ate traditional food. I also went with Wejdan to see her workshop for the happiness department within Dubai government. Both women had careers, they never married, and they worked in the arts. Now in Canada you might think that this is, not so different, but in the Emirates, in Dubai, for the women, the Emirati women never to marry is almost unheard of. And for them to go into the arts and be successful is something very rare. So these women were very special. Raja and Wejdan had gone to Avignon with me, and Wejdan was the first Emirati woman to receive a master's in theater. It was wonderful reconnecting with Seema and seeing the new Dubai. It had changed, but the focus on money and wanting to be the best and the biggest hadn't changed at all. It was glossier and more futuristic than I remembered, but the bling of Dubai is what makes it unique. After Dubai, I headed to Kathmandu, Nepal. The airport in Kathmandu was a sign that I'd arrived in a developing country. What a shock after coming from affluent Dubai. I purchased a 15-day visa on arrival. Only 3 of the 8 visa machines worked, and there was, of course, a lineup for each. I took a deep breath and put my mind into slow gear. I knew this was going to take time. After I got the visa from the machine, I had to go to a counter and pay $45 American, then on to another line for immigration. When I finally finished and went outside, it was dark and raining heavily. The roads were bad with huge potholes, and as the taxi winded through back alleys and dirt roads, I began to wonder, where is this man taking me? We finally arrived in an area called Patan, where I had rented a room in a traditional Nepalese guest house. The taxi driver used his cell and called the owner of the guest house because he couldn't find it. A few minutes later, we stopped beside a dirt road, and a man appeared on his bicycle. I got out and followed the man down the dirt road. Was I insane? I followed the man, trusting that I had a guardian angel and that she was working that night. Halfway down the alley, he gestured for me to enter a door in a wall. As I entered this 250-year-old home, it was dark. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw that the old home had charm. It turned out that I had made a good choice, as the Nepalese family I stayed with were gentle and sweet. Now I'm going to ask my friend over here, Muriel and Alistair, if they could take one of my pictures and show you what this place looked like that I stayed in. Can you show people that that was the door I went into? Sorry, I lost my place. Whenever I'd smile, they'd return my smile with a much broader grin, and I felt completely safe. They called their home Hotel Yambu, a name given by Tibetans and other ethnic people living in the Himalayan region. It means northern land. I decided to stay in Patan, which is south of Kathmandu. Traditionally, this is where the artists lived. What a stroke of luck. The colorful costumes were beautiful. The next day I went into Patan Square. There was music and there was dancing. And by chance, I met the president of the drama club. And he took me under his wing, so I got the best seat in the house. Most people speak a little English, and some speak it very, very well. The next day I took a local bus that was an adventure in itself to an ancient city with Hindu temples and Buddhist shrines. Kathmandu is one of the most polluted cities in the world. Taking local buses was not a good idea for me. Many of the buses had large holes in the back and exhaust fumes swept through, making it uncomfortable to breathe. The massive number of motorcycles on the road threw up dust in the open windows, and after a couple of days, I felt very ill. My chest was heavy and it was hard to breathe. So I knew I had a chest infection, but I hoped it would go away. I went to the Monkey Temple in Kathmandu. Perched on a forested hill overlooking the valley, this ancient site is home to this Wahuna Stupa, which is over 2,000 years old, and teeming with over 100 monkeys. It's a pilgrimage spot for devout Hindus and Buddhists in the fall. And I'm just going to show you a picture of the stupa. I learned there's a big difference between stupas and temples. And a stupa basically is a somewhat dome-shaped building, and very important Buddhist relics are kept in the building. People don't go in it. But of course, the temple, people will go in to pray. So I'm going to ask my helpers to show you this picture. This is a stupa, and this is the monkey temple in Kathmandu. The site is a sprawling complex with numerous small shrines, stupas, and temples. There's also a monastery and quaint shops brimming with trinkets and carvings. I bought a bunch of bananas to feed the monkeys. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a troop of monkeys came scrambling out of the forest and all at the same time rushed towards me. I got scared and threw the bananas in the air. The monkeys went crazy, grabbing and fighting over the bananas, and then disappeared into the forest surrounding the village. That was a little startling. Perhaps the banana seller should have a sign that declares buying bananas can be dangerous. The best experience I had in Nepal was being invited to the celebration of the birth of my host's nephew. Everyone brought food. The new mother and her son sat on a queen's chair receiving people and gifts. I put a small amount of money into an envelope, which was apparently an acceptable thing to do. People were so kind. At the celebration, there was delicious home-cooked food, music, dancing, and lots of people spoke with me. I learned a lot about Nepal that evening. It was such a unique experience. Back at my host's home, I was invited for dinner every night on the third floor with the grandparents. They didn't want me out alone at night. After a week, when it was time for me to leave the little guest house, the bill did not reflect the dinners that I had eaten with them. When I mentioned this to my host, he said, no, you are our guest. That was too generous of them, so I paid a little extra. The entire family were at the entrance to say goodbye to me. I worried about them during COVID because without guests, they wouldn't have money. But I met a woman in Bhutan who was looking for a place to stay in Nepal, so I suggested she stay at the guest house. She did, and she had a wonderful time. Now we're going to go on to Bhutan. Bhutan, a tiny, mysterious country nestled between China and India, with Nepal as its neighbor, was my next destination. I couldn't help but think back to that crisp winter day in northern Ontario when the idea first took root in my mind. I was sitting in my daughter's home looking out the window. I was searching for volunteer positions in unique places around the world when an article about the Bhutan Canada Foundation in Toronto caught my eye. Bhutan was one of those far-off places you occasionally hear of, but seldomly know. It intrigued me. What was it like? Curiosity got the better of me, so I searched for the Bhutan Canada Foundation on Google, got the phone number, picked up the phone and dialed. A friendly woman said hello, and we quickly fell into a 30-minute conversation. My question was whether Bhutan would be interested in me as a volunteer. She thought it might be possible through an education program, but only if the Bhutanese Ministry of Education were interested. Send us your CV and a letter outlining how you think you could contribute. So I did. I waited several months before I was finally accepted. Bhutan, as it turns out, was not a country one simply waltzed into. They were fiercely protective of their unspoiled nature and ancient culture. and they only allowed a limited number of tourists in every year. And as a tourist, you had to pay a staggering $200 American a day. I couldn't afford that, but as a volunteer, I didn't have to. Still, the road wasn't without its obstacles. Even after receiving my acceptance, I had no certainty when or if my visa would be approved. I left Canada with my fingers crossed, not knowing whether I'd be able to set foot in Bhutan. It was difficult waiting, not knowing, but finally the news came when I was in Dubai with SEMA. My visa had been approved. I was one step closer to Bhutan, the hidden gem. I had only dreamed about experiencing this. The journey had been long, but now I would soon step into a different world, and I felt very, very privileged. When I flew to Bhutan, my chest infection moved to my left ear, and that is where it stayed. So in other words, I was deaf in Bhutan the whole time. But hey, I was going to Bhutan. Okay, can you do a picture, please? Okay, the picture that's coming around right now is mostly pictures of landing in Bhutan, the airport, and the runway. I'll explain, but it's one of the most dangerous countries in the world to fly into, and there's only like maybe 10 pilots that have the training to fly in there, and it's pretty scary. So, this is the last chapter that I'm going to be reading, and this is called Bhutan, a Reclusive Nation. Steeped in mythology, Bhutan, with a history that dates to 2000 BC, is one of the last mysteries of the world. That is how I imagine this small Buddhist country existing away from the world in between China and India, a hidden treasure. As the prop plane took off from Kathmandu and headed straight for the Himalayas, the engine echoed against the rugged peaks, and I felt I was in my element, discovering a mystery on a path I had chosen for myself. Paro International Airport, known to be one of the most dangerous, awaited us. Only the most skilled pilots, after a lot of training, are permitted to fly through these unforgiving mountains. As we soared through the skies, the jagged, snow-covered peaks of the Himalayas emerged, towering above the clouds. The pilot came on and told us to look right, and there it was, Mount Everest, the king of them all. At times, the plane skimmed dangerously close to the mountains, so close that the wings seemed to brush the air between us and them. I kept my nerves in check and tried to smile. The sharp peaks seemed to reach out, the misty clouds, and then there was nothing. The plane descended, and as we came out of the mist, far below was a narrow strip of asphalt wedged between two towering cliffs. No way, but yes, that's where we were heading. Down, down, down. I heard the landing gear drop, and then we touched. I felt every bump. Reverse thrusters kicked in with a screech. The jagged mountains disappeared, and the plane rolled to a halt. Well, that was a little scary, but we all survived. As I disembarked, I saw mountains as high as 6,000 meters. And in front of me was the most unique airport terminal I'd ever seen in all my travels. With colorful tiles on the roof, paintings on the walls, frescoes, and Buddhist symbols, it looked like the monastery from a fantasy world. People dressed in traditional Bhutanese clothing, gold for men, and kira for women. The goa is a knee-length robe that is wrapped around the body and tied to the waist with a belt called a kera. The women's attire is known as kira, and it's an ankle-length dress that is draped and fashioned at the shoulder. A long-sleeve jacket, a tego, is worn over the kira, and the clothing is very colorful. We were greeted and guided through immigration. Considering Bhutan had shut itself off from the outside world for centuries, it was amazing that I was even there. It wasn't until the 1970s that Bhutan slowly began to open its borders. To this day, Bhutan has never been occupied or conquered. Bhutan, or Tukul, translates to the dragon people, or the land of the thunder dragon. The residents speak Dzongkha, but English is the language of instruction at schools so that they can communicate with the world. I was escorted to a currency exchange counter to buy Bhutanese currency, which has the same value as the Indian rupee, but it is only good in Bhutan. So unless you want to keep it as a souvenir, you either need to spend it all or find a currency exchange before you leave. A Bhutanese woman, a representative of the Bhutan Canada Foundation, met me at the airport with the driver. They were both dressed in traditional clothing. I love nations that wear ethnic clothing, that have not adapted to blue jeans and sweatshirts. On our ride from the airport to Paro, I was overwhelmed with the beauty of the land and the mountain views. As we drove beside the river, fields with traditional homes and images of animals painted on window shutters, intriguing wooden doors and elaborate carvings on beams popped up all along the mountainsides and the river edge. We arrived at a small hotel in Paro, a city of almost 20,000 people. In the restaurant were a group of people who were also volunteering, and a gentleman who was the Bhutan Canada liaison. I tried one of their most popular dishes, happy hoenta, which is a dumpling made from buckwheat dough with a delicious filling of leafy greens, chilies, and yak cheese. So tasty. After lunch, we went to the fabric shop, where we were asked to pick fabric to have a kira made, which we would wear to school every day. The fabric was luxurious, the colors were vibrant, and influenced by the Han clothing from Tibet. I chose rich greens and blues. Later, I went for a walk. The city center was small, hilly, and the main road was lined with traditional shops. In the middle was a roundabout of sorts, with a policeman directing traffic from a small gazebo. He directed traffic in the most unusual way. It was a choreographed dance. I stood fascinated and watched him for several minutes. Okay, I'm going to ask my helper friends to come over here and just start showing all the pictures of Bhutan as I finish reading my chapter. So if you could take this one, this is a traditional home. And if you could take this one, and when you finish with those, bring them back, and then we'll bring some more. Now you can show everybody this way. Okay, walk around and show them, and then come back to them. Okay? You can give them these to hand out as I read, and they can walk around. Okay. Thank you, Muriel and Alistair, for helping. Sorry, okay. So, later, I said that. It was a choreographed dance. Okay. I'd been chosen to volunteer at the high school in Ha Valley. This valley had only opened to tourists 2 years before. The next morning, I was driven from Paro to Ha, a 3-hour drive through the Chele Pass at 4,000 meters. When we reached the summit, we stopped to see the colorful prayer flags on poles. The scene felt eerie. It reminded me of pieces of cloth hanging on poles on sacred land or in graveyards. For hundreds of years, prayer flags have been part of the traditions of Bhutan and bring good luck, happiness, and good karma. The Ha Valley lies behind the mountain ridge of Shaili, so we began our journey down a very narrow, treacherous road with sheer drops on one side. It snaked its way down until we emerged from the forest into the Ha Valley. So remote. I was enchanted. Time poured over me and I went into a state of suspended disbelief in this paradise. The sound of cowbells, monks chanting, and just the gentlest feeling of wind in the mountains, the lush green farmlands, primeval alpine forests, clean flowing rivers, and crystal blue clean air. It was truly magical, a land untouched by time. We drove into the Ha Valley, into a tiny village with one little street. At one end was a small hotel. The rest of the street was lined with very old traditional buildings. Many had a store of sorts on the first floor, and people lived above. Others had a small family-owned restaurant with simple food like potatoes and chilies, and rice with chilies. Whatever they served, there was always lots of chilies. The main crops that the Ha Valley farmers grew were potatoes, apples, wheat, rice, and chilies. Across from the school, there was a small bridge. As I crossed the bridge, I could see up and down the river and the beauty of the valley. There was a small Buddhist temple where many residents prayed every morning. Devout Buddhists lived in this tranquil, ancient place. The ambience was much quieter than the call to prayer in the Arab world. It was gentler and more spiritual for me. The people of Ha are called Hapsan. Traditionally, Hapsan are mountain people who are nomadic yak herders. Listening to the people in Ha, I learned that yaks in Ha are definitely superior. At least that is what the locals said. The yak herders reminded me of the Romanian shepherds I'd seen. It seemed to me that all shepherds were kind of the same. They have an isolated life, moving in harmony with nature. Of course, in the future, this traditional way of life may end. So it was with great happiness that I watched and watched the shepherds. The high school that was chosen for me dated back to 1913 and is recorded as being the first school in Bhutan. There were about 550 students. It was so simple. A small library with a few books, classrooms with old chairs and desks, blackboards with chalk, no IT, and no cell phones. Students were attentive, ready to participate, and smiled broadly when I entered the room. I was so happy to be there. We were asked not to photocopy anything, as the photocopying machine was on its last legs. Each day would begin with students and faculty outside singing, chanting, and meditating as a group. While this was happening, you could sometimes hear the monks chanting in the mountains, not far from the school. This was repeated after lunch before students returned to classes. Students were polite, and when I was on the school grounds, groups of students would discuss all kinds of things with me. And when I told them I'd fallen in love with the cows, they laughed. It seems that all humans, from the beginning of time, have searched for drugs. And the Bhutanese are no exception to this phenomenon. Betel leaf and nut chewing is an ancient practice in Bhutan. Men, women, and monks chew this at all hours of the day and night. It relaxes people. Domo pani, which is betel leaves and archaea nuts, is legal, but tobacco has been illegal in Bhutan for a very, very long time. Bhutanese buy Damopani because this concoction gives them a temporary high and it keeps you warm, awake, and focused. I tried it, but I had to spit it out because it was really, really bitter. It is common to hear the phrase "donche," which literally means, please have a betel leaf. Many Bhutanese, both young and old, are addicted to doma. They relish it, despite the resulting red lips and heavily stained teeth. It doesn't matter. My principal, Mr. Sonam, and many of the teachers chewed this all day. No wonder Bhutan has the highest happiness rating in the world. Everyone is mellowed by taking Domopani. Killing of any kind is illegal. Fishing is illegal because fishing is killing, and fish are sentient beings. I wonder if that is why the Bhutanese people are so gentle. Every day I put an apple or two in my pocket for the cows. After a while, the cows waited for me on the street. I never realized how beautiful cows' eyes are and what gentle creatures they can be. I'd always hoped to find a place like Bhutan in my travels, a place where nature is revered, and where a king will visit places like Ha, change into work clothes, and help on the farms. Casey, one of the teachers, invited me to her home, and hanging on the wall was a picture of her family and the king in farm clothes. She told me that he is the humblest man. He married a commoner and cares very, very deeply about his people. His Majesty is the 5th and reigning king of Bhutan. And on National Day, on December 17th, 2017, the king, his wife, and their 1-year-old boy, the Dragon Prince, traveled to the Ha Valley. It is the only country in the world where the government doesn't have the GDP. To replace the gross domestic product, Bhutan developed the Gross National Happiness, GNH, which indicates a country's level of happiness. The students were a joy to teach and had the best sense of humor. They loved acting and put their heart and soul into the work. Basically, my work was to bring an awareness of the arts into all subject areas. I worked with English literature, science, social science, and history teachers. I gave workshops using theater, art, and music. The teachers participated in the workshops and were very eager to learn. The class I taught daily was a grade 11 communication class. The students wanted to put on a play and decided on a shortened version of Dracula for Halloween. It's not uncommon to experience grand performances in Bhutan, as the Bhutanese are masters of grand theatrical events. At the festivals, there were colorful traditional masks and costumes and choreographed centuries-old dances that acted out legends and myths. The Teshu Festival in Thimphu, the capital of Bhutan, also called the National Festival of Bhutan, is the largest and most popular celebration in the country. And it is preceded by days and nights of prayers to invoke the divine gods. I was told that I would obtain good fortune if I were to attend this performance. So I went. Sitting in front at the festival were a group of young monks. The mass dances are performed to bless onlookers and teach them the Buddhist Dharma. I loved the mass costumes and energetic dances. They were ritualistic and enchanting, enacting legends and myths of times gone by. I went to an archery competition. The male teachers from Lower Ha and Upper Ha were playing against each other. It is a tradition in Ha that all men play archery. For the longest time, they played with bamboo bows and arrows, but now they buy fancy bows from Western countries. It takes time to save enough money to buy them. And I noticed they were very proud of their bows. They had a campfire, and it was an all-day event. I stayed for a couple of hours and was invited for lunch, which consisted of red rice, spicy chilies, beans, curd, cucumbers, and cabbage with mushrooms. I noticed they had a bottle of whiskey to keep warm. Archery is another ancient tradition in Bhutan. It is more than just a sport. It is a way of life. When boys become men, they take up the bow. Every village had an archery field, and alcohol is synonymous with the tournaments. Archers drink the local brew called Ada because they say it gives them courage and a better aim. Not so sure about that. There are a few stories as to why archery is so popular in Bhutan. One is a tale about Prince Siddhartha, who won the hand of Princess Yasodhara because he was victorious in an archery competition. This prince became known as Buddha. Because of stories like this and others, the bow and arrow have become part of the Bhutanese culture. Are the Bhutanese the happiest people in the world? I don't know. But it was the most serene environment, and it made a lasting impression on me. I spent my days with the children and my evenings with my head covered with a towel over a steaming bowl of hot water with herbs, trying to clear my deaf ear. I went to a small Indian medical clinic just outside of Ha, where they told me I had to travel to Thimphu, the capital of Bhutan, and see an ear specialist. So one day a driver came and off we went. We arrived in the afternoon, and the next morning I went to the hospital and met an ear specialist who gave me some kind of herbs to put in my water when I steamed my ear. He said my left ear was badly infected, but that hopefully these herbs would work because they didn't have any antibiotics or medicine. Okay, that's fine, excellent. So I went back to Ha the next week after numerous steaming. My ears started to feel better. Before I left Bhutan, I went on a trek to Tiger's Nest, the most famous monastery in Bhutan. Some monasteries are closed to tourists, but this one was open. But to reach the Tiger's Nest takes between 4 to 5 hours, depending on how fit you are. It was a very, very steep climb, and at times I thought I'd die. But I did make it to the milk tea stop, and then decided I didn't want a heart attack, and I stopped. The Tiger's Nest Monastery is located near Pardo. It was constructed in 1692. There is a story that Ino Rope, a monk from Tibet, flew on the back of a tigress to this very spot, bringing Buddhism with him. Today, Tiger's Nest consists of 4 temples with residential accommodation for the monks. It is 3,120 meters high. Tiger's Nest Monastery has the most interesting architect. It's so ornate and unusual. So far, Bhutan has kept the West at bay. The people voted to keep out American franchise like McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Starbucks, etc. As I flew out of Paro, I wondered how long Bhutan's innocence can survive. I also wondered if China or India was swallowed up. It's so fragile. I felt honored to have experienced this wonderful, most magical nation and see the most beautiful smiles on people's faces. What a remarkable place. The day I flew out of Bhutan, I felt sad to leave, but was grateful to have experienced a place where I felt completely safe and where I saw smiling faces every day. I flew from Bhutan to Bangkok, had a short stop, and then flew to Naha, Okinawa. I arrived intact, but very thirsty and hungry and tired, as I just flown 9 hours on Peach Airways, and they didn't have any water or food, not even for sale. I didn't know that you had to bring your own. Well, I guess that's why my ticket was so inexpensive. You really do get what you pay for. And I think that's about it.
That sounds like you have amazing stories, and they're full of adventure. And just so everyone knows, her book is for sale up here at the counter. It is $15. And Jane is hanging around for a little bit. So if anybody has any questions, or if they would like a little one-on-one, I'm sure that she is perfectly willing to talk to you. She is absolutely full of stories, and she is so much fun to talk to. So please take advantage of this opportunity to let her fill you in on what her life has been like, because it's fascinating. Jane, your stories are incredible.